biggest story of the day, without a doubt, is the Cleveland Browns drafting Dillon Gabriel, 94th overall, and before Shedeur Sanders, and then 50 picks later, also grabbing Shedeur Sanders. What were your thoughts on that?
Man, a lot of thoughts on it. For one, I like taking a chance on a guy like Dillon Gabriel in the third round, dude. I really do. I think in the third round is when you go for a guy like that, and I think he has pretty decent arm strength, so he can play outdoors, which is going to be a factor in Cleveland. But I mean, of course, the Shedeur fall was shocking, right? I mean, all the quarterbacks that went before Shedeur. I mean, no one expected Dillon Gabriel to go before Shedeur. And him falling all the way to the fourth round was, I mean, it was shocking, man, to say the least. And but the Browns doubling up, dude, that was, I mean, that just made the Shedeur fall even more surprising because it's like, wow. I mean, and dude, we have to talk about like the reaction from the front office. It's That was interesting, dude. The front office did not seem very happy about picking Shedeur. That's all I'm gonna say. And I said fourth round. He fell all the way to the fifth, man. I mean, it's just
Yep.
unbelievable. Six QB taken, or yeah, six QB taken in the class. Like, I mean, dude, he was a consensus top 20 pick. And listen, I mean, it's pretty obvious that a lot of it had to do with non-football related reasons. Or I wouldn't even say non-football related reasons, like leadership concerns, right? I mean, like teams don't love when you're throwing your offensive line under the bus, and I think that's kind of went into this Shedeur fall. But man, from the Browns' perspective, dude, just purely from the Browns' perspective, I absolutely love it. Like you're taking two chances at the most important position, and you got a guy that was some people thought you could take with the number two overall draft pick, dude. The number two overall draft pick, and you got him in the fifth round. And on top of the trade, what you did with the second overall pick, turned that into Mason Graham, a first round pick. Like, I mean, just from the Browns' perspective, dude, doubling up at the most important position, and now you kind of have like who's gonna win the QB battle between the rookies, like who's gonna emerge as the best rookie on this team. It's gonna be interesting to watch, dude.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, when Gabriel going before him in general was a shock to see him come off the board that early. He's been an interesting prospect that a lot of the guys we follow, like with the check the mic guys, they were a bit higher on him than I think the consensus. But for context, the consensus had him at 178, and he went 94th overall. Um, which and we'll touch on that more later. But these QBs in general kind of went lower than what people thought. He's one of the only ones that actually went higher. Um, but Shedeur finished at 12 on the consensus board. And obviously that's from an outside perspective looking in. Because at the end of the day, like, you may not love him as a prospect, but to be honest, the football aspect is not what led us here,
No.
right? Like, that is not what got us here. So, like, he has the talent. But I completely agree from like, the Browns taking a shot on two QBs like this, a guy that people would have, if they had taken him second overall, would have been like, may not love it, but like makes sense. Like you've got to take a shot on the QB. You got to get out of the Deshaun Watson situation, and instead they get him in the sixth round, or yeah, the fifth round, yeah, at the top of the fifth. And now you have an interesting QB room. It's
Very
going to be fascinating to
interesting.
see. Yeah, I mean somebody's on the way out. So for context, they have Deshaun Watson still under contract, but he will be out this season with an injury. They traded for Kenny Pickett, and then they also signed Joe Flacco. Now they've drafted these two guys, so looks like Flacco's probably on the way out. He'll be unless they cut one of these rookies, but it'd be fascinating to see. And I think one of the biggest conversations will be how Shedeur handles this. Going from being what people thought was going to be kind of a minimum of first round pick to being drafted in the fifth round, and not even just being drafted there, but being drafted after somebody else to that team. Where all things considered, you're kind of going in as QB5 on the depth chart right now. So
Yeah.
it will be a fascinating training camp and off season workout for the Browns.
It really will, dude. I mean, they are a great contender for Hard Knocks. We talked about that earlier, but I almost wonder if they'll lean Joe Flacco in this competition, which I know sounds insane. If Joe Flacco wins this job, that would be absolutely hilarious. But having that veteran presence, right? Somebody who's done it before, and Shedeur and Dillon Gabriel can learn behind, that might be pretty valuable. And let's just be honest for our listeners, dude. The little listeners we have right now, we're trying to be honest on this show. That's our goal. Kenny Pickett's not winning you games, dude. That's just not happening. Not in that division with Joe Burrow and Lamar Jackson. That is just not that. He's not a competitive quarterback. He's a good backup option. He's a great backup option.
Right.
One of the better backups in the league, I would say. But he's just not a viable starting option. So for me, you should focus more on the development of your rookies. And I'm not sure like Kenny Pickett really helps the development of those rookies in that room, because for them to get out of this Deshaun Watson situation completely, which they are doing a phenomenal job of doing, by the way. I mean, this might be the worst like move ever made by a team. Like seriously, like between the draft capital they gave up and the contract for Deshaun, it might be literally the worst move in NFL history, and I don't think that's an exaggeration. But they are doing such a good job right now of trying to get out of this by the trade back, and now you take 2 chances at QBs. But the way you fully get out of it is one of these rookie QBs hitting the high end of their potential and becoming a viable starting NFL QB. And potentially, you know, this is like a very low percentage chance of this happening, but an elite QB. But keep in mind, like Shedeur's might be the 6th QB off the board, but look at any mock draft, any consensus board. This was the 2nd ranked QB in this draft class, and they got him in the 5th round. There's absolutely zero risk in this, dude. That's one like thing that I'm taking from it. It's like, okay, yeah, you have the question marks of him as a player, but you can cut him in the offseason. It doesn't matter. It's a 5th round pick. Teams cut 5th round picks all the time, so it wouldn't be that shocking. But the upside of it is you get the 2nd best QB in the class, or potentially the 1st best QB in the class, and you get your franchise quarterback. That's the upside of this. So, I mean, no risk to a lot of upside. I mean, there's not a lot of better moves you can make.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Like, if you draft him in the 1st round, the optics there are going to be tough if things go south. You're kind of in it for the long haul for the most part, right? Like you kind of have to ride out whatever happens with the off-field antics or whatever that becomes. But drafting him in the 5th round means like we'll see. Like I don't want to say humble him because we don't know the whole details of everything, but like you put him in an interesting situation now where you do kind of have a short leash for him, right? Like he now controls how much he's going to contribute to your team, and you now have the full power on whether or not he's a part of that. So if he comes in and dedicates his time to getting better and focusing on football, and he could end up becoming your franchise quarterback, that's fantastic. If not, you can, to your point, you can just cut him. You can move on really easily now without having to worry about anything else. And you basically just wasted a 1st round pick or even a 2nd. Well, that would have been a tough thing to sell. So you basically have an easy out now. And then to your point, you have an incredible amount of high upside there. I think the only thing that'll be interesting, and his arm's not that bad, but like we talked on it a little bit that him going to a dome like the Saints probably would have been really good, but I don't think it's going to be a bit of an issue. But that will be one thing to watch with him in Cleveland. But yeah,
dude, I think out of all the teams, and we'll get into our favorite drafts later, and this might be a hint towards that, but out of all the teams outside of the Titans, which had the 1st overall pick, so they did the no-brainer move and take Cam Ward. The Browns did the best at navigating their bad QB situation, in my opinion, dude. Like out of like what I saw from all the other teams, and I don't hate those other moves. I'm just saying doubling up at 2 QBs in the 3rd and 5th round, which again, there's not a lot of investment there, and you get the consensus 2nd overall QB in the draft. Like, I mean, there's no better way they could have handled a bad QB class, because that's what every team was handling in this draft class, is that this was a poor quarterback class overall. It just wasn't one of the better classes. So, like in a tough situation to find a franchise quarterback, I think the Browns did the best they could. And who knows, it could not work out. I'm not saying it's like a slam dunk. One of these guys will end up becoming good, but it's better to have 2 chances at a guy coming good than just 1. So.
Exactly. You have to take shots at the most important position, and in the state of their roster with the Deshaun Watson situation, having 2 guys like that to come in and potentially do it. And again, chances are they probably don't work out as top quarterbacks, but you have to take those chances. So definitely cannot fault them for that. And some people might say, oh, why would you do that? But like, it's also just insurance. I mean, one of the best examples of that working out so well was Washington in 2012.
Yes.
Right? They
Yes.
take RG3 second overall and then take Kirk Cousins in, I think, the fourth round that year.
Fourth round. Yep.
And then RG3 has the injury stuff that you really didn't see coming. That didn't really happen while he was at Baylor. And then Kirk takes over and ends up becoming a solid starter for them and goes on to get a big contract elsewhere. So those are the types of things you can never plan for, but you having that insurance and that type of thing is also super helpful. So
Or even more recently with the Falcons. I mean, it's a little bit different
true.
situation because you didn't take two
Right.
rookies, but you signed Kirk Cousins as this massive offseason deal. And it honestly, from the outside looking in, it's like, okay, now the Falcons are going to compete for the division. They have their franchise QB. But then you go draft Michael Penix top 10 overall, and people thought it was ridiculous. How are you going to draft a
Yeah.
quarterback when you just signed one to a massive contract? And then look what happened. Kirk Cousins can no longer really play at the level that he used to play at. And Michael Penix ended up being as of now, he's a good pick. And now they have their franchise guy for the future. So yeah, man, there's never there's never enough shots at quarterback, man. When you don't have a guy that's elite, to me, you have to keep taking shots at it until you get a guy like that.